Hey guys, and welcome back to Hummingbird Acres. Today we are going to be making 2 of our artisan sourdough breads. We are going to be using our sourdough starter for this. If you are looking to start a sourdough starter, or maybe you have started one in the past but have failed, you need our fail-proof guide to sourdough starters. It is a step-by-step 10-day process on how you can create a sourdough starter that is thriving and just loving you and loving your house. So I will leave a link to that guide below. Make sure you get it. Like I said, it is fail-proof. We've used it for years. We've had friends use it. It is what we used. It's perfect. So make sure you get that guide below. We are gonna use our starter today to make 2 artisan loaves. When I am baking with sourdough, I like to use a scale and I like to use a ceramic bowl. I love using our scale because it is more accurate and precise at baking, and I only get 2 things dirty in this entire process. I will get the scale, well no, sorry, I won't get the scale dirty. The ceramic bowl and the spatula are the only 2 things that will get dirty while I am prepping this dough, which makes easy cleanup, great for busy moms and everyday happenings on the homestead. So let's dive right in to making this artisan sourdough loaf. So I'm going to start by adding my active sourdough to my ceramic bowl on my scale. This sourdough starter was fed the night before, so it is nice and bubbly and nice and active. If you want to know more about sourdough starters, check out our free fail-proof sourdough guide, which I will link below for you. From there, I'm going to add in water. I think it's 650 grams of water is what I normally add. If your starter seems a little bit more on the wet side, then you can add less water. And make sure the water you add is, I like to add like non-chlorinated water. We have well water, so we don't have to worry about the chlorine. But if you are on city water, then leaving the water sit out for a little bit is a good idea. You also want to make sure that you tar your scale, which means put it back to 0 every time you add something. Now we're going to add in some salt. And I should note that this recipe does make 2 loaves of bread. I prefer to use bread flour when I am baking. I just have better results with it. The loaves are more fluffier, definitely airier, more holes. You can use all-purpose flour, but you're just not gonna have the same result. When I first started baking sourdough, all I used was all-purpose flour, and I just never got the results I liked or that I wanted until I switched to bread flour. So we keep bread flour and all-purpose flour on hand at all times because of that. Okay. Now, I do want to note that I use bread flour when I am baking, but I do not use bread flour to feed my sourdough starter. When I am feeding my sourdough starter, I use all-purpose flour. All right, so I'm going to remove this from the scale. I'm going to get a spatula, and I'm going to stir this up. It's going to turn into a shaggy ball. Once I get it, sometimes I do this and sometimes I don't. When I get most of it combined together, then what I will do is put my hands in and start using my hands to combine. Sometimes the dough is wet enough that I don't have to do that. Today is not one of those days. Get this stuff off the side. This all kneaded and mixed together. All right, I'm gonna cover this and let it sit for about 30 minutes. This has been sitting on the counter for about 30 minutes. So what I'm gonna do now is perform a series of stretches and folds. So I'm just gonna tuck my hand underneath, pull it up, push it down, turn the bowl, and do that. I'm gonna go around about 3 or 4 times around the bowl. You can see it's starting to come together in a nice ball. All right, I'm gonna cover this back up. I am gonna let it sit for another 30 minutes and then do another series of stretches and folds. I'm gonna do that 3 more times and then I'm gonna let it sit. Okay, dump it in the trash can.
I want to make an experiment with the bowl.
No. All right, so that was my 3rd stretch and fold for this loaf. I am going to now cover it up and I'm going to let it sit so it doubles in size. Some tips for letting it double in size. If your house is cold, place it on a heat mat. These are just seed heat mats, but place it on one of these. It will keep it in even temperature. If you have a wood burning stove, you can put it in the same room as your wood burning stove, but do not put this actually on your wood burning stove because that will bake it. But you want it to sit somewhere warm. If it's the summer, you could actually leave it outside. We have a covered porch. We put it out there. That's plenty warm. Just you need the heat in order to get it to double and rise. So I'm gonna use a heat mat. I'm gonna let this sit until it's doubled. And then I am going to put it in the refrigerator. Once my dough doubled in size, I covered it with saran wrap and put it in the fridge. I did put it in the fridge overnight because that was just the time I was baking it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to dump this out and divide it into 2 balls. I should say I'm gonna divide it into 2 loaves. First though, I am going to, it looks a little wet, so I'm gonna make sure that my surface has a good amount of flour. A little bit more on top, and then let's cut this in half. All right, from there, I am going to shape this, and the way I'm going to do this is kind of make it into somewhat of a ball. Then I'm going to pull everything in. So it's kind of all on the bottom, kind of like that. Turn it over, and then using both of my hands, you can also use your bench scraper. I prefer my hands. I'm gonna pull the sides in while spinning it. This makes the tension on the top nice so you can score it really easily. Now I'm gonna get my baton. And I'm going to insert my cover. So it's in the middle. All right, and then I'm going to generously flour the inside of this. For this, if you think you have enough flour, just add more. It makes it easier. I always seem to underflour this, and then my bread ends up sticking. So once I have that all floured, I'm going to take, let's do it this way. I'm going to take my loaf. I'm gonna put it in here upside down, just like that. And I'm gonna let this sit for a couple of hours and rise. do the same thing with this one. This one I'm going to do an oblong shape today. And let's see if I can reuse some of this. Okay, let's see. I'm going to do it in a circle first, and then I'll that looks pretty good. Take it, oops, put it upside down. I'm going to cover these and let them rise for a couple of hours. So my bread is about ready to bake. I have my oven set to 450 degrees, and I have put my Dutch oven in there to heat up while the oven heats up. So what I'm gonna do is use a piece of parchment paper. I'm gonna do the round one first. I am gonna do it on top of here. Cover it over, and this is where I always find I don't flour it enough. Yeah, which is okay. This is why I said earlier in the video, flour more than you think. It's also really, really humid here today, so I know that that is a contributing factor. So for the most part though, you can normally get it pretty good. I'm going to flour this just a little more. Makes it easier to cut your vent holes. So, okay, and then I'm gonna use my lathe and cut some air vents. I have done this with a knife before, a sharp knife. It just does not have, it's not the same as a lathe. I don't know, for some reason, this just works so much better. You're gonna cut design, you can cut so many different designs. I normally go pretty basic, not looking for anything fancy. Normally cut two, one on this side and one on this side to get it so that it has air. Okay, when my oven heats up, I'm going to put this inside my Dutch oven. I'm going to bake it for 25 minutes with the lid on, and then I will bake it for another 20 minutes with the lid off. Once your bread is done, you want to pull it out of the Dutch oven and you want it to sit for at least an hour to let it cool down and finish baking on the inside. Once that is done, use your bread knife and start cutting away. For us, this does not last more than a day, but there you got it. Oops, let's see if I get this open. there you have it, some artisan sourdough. For this recipe and other sourdough recipes, head on over to our website. I will leave a link below.